Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this week's episode of Facebook Live. Today, I'll be talking with you about choosing the right materials for your lifestyle. Before we do that, and as people are joining in, I just thought I'd introduce myself today. My name is Heather, and I am a designer at AyA Kitchens and Bath. Along with my colleagues, we are here to help guide you through the process of creating your dream kitchen. AyA is a local Canadian manufacturer, and we pride ourselves on our focus on design and green initiatives. So thank you again for joining us today, and I'll get started again on how to help you choose your preferred materials for your space based on your lifestyle. So I think there's a lot of things to consider when we are choosing materials for your kitchen. Now, perhaps you are renovating an existing space, maybe it's a new build, and I think there's several things that you want to factor in when picking your materials from the get-go. We tend to primarily focus on the aesthetics of our space when choosing finishes like the color, the material, and even the style of the doors themselves. But I do think there's a few things that we need to consider before we even start going that far. Primarily, I think you want to consider who is using your space. That will impact the materials that you select, and it will definitely play a factor in the longevity of your kitchen. So things to consider would be, is it a high traffic kitchen space? Do you cook a lot? Do you entertain a lot? Perhaps you have kids that use the space with you as well, even pets. I know my dog tends to spend a lot of time in the kitchen and leans up against our white cabinetry, so we've got a lot of cleaning to always do. So certainly things like that you do want to consider. And I think I mentioned too that using your kitchen a lot needs to be factored in if you're entertaining, or is it more of a show kitchen that you tend to order in food. In addition to that, I think you want to think about the flow of traffic in your kitchen as well. Is it somewhere that has a lot of heavy traffic back and forth, people passing through? Today, with self-quarantine or self-isolation, we tend to be spending a lot of time in our kitchen space as well. And moving forward, I think that's going to be a pattern that we see, whether or not it's kids doing homework at an island, if it is us working from home in our kitchen space, and also entertaining as well. Will there be a lot of people sitting around, leaning on counters, cabinetry, that type of stuff? So I think those are important to consider when we pick materials for your cabinetry also. And the reality too is, I think, considering who's going to be cleaning your space. Do you have a cleaning service that's going to help you out with that? Do you have the kids that help you? Is that part of their chores? Or are you cleaning the space yourself? Also something to consider will be if you have any limitations, possibly visual or mobility as well. That may play a factor into both how you use your kitchen, but also how you clean your kitchen in the space. Another factor I think that you want to consider will be, is resale a potential for you? Is this a dream home that you're building for yourself to stay there indefinitely, or is this something that either you're flipping right now or you plan to live in for a short period of time, and following that you plan to put it on the market? That's going to have a drastic impact, I think, on the materials that you select. Be it something that stands the test of time, that appeals to a wide audience, or again, if it's your dream home, maybe that's not something that you need to factor in which case choosing your material, I think, is going to be a very different approach. You'll want to choose a material that you love and that you're happy with, as opposed to a resale when you want to think about a wider target market. And then finally, a big factor is going to be the style of the actual cabinetry itself. So when thinking about that, you might wonder why style will play into materials. And I think with that, we tend to have particular style groups that lend better towards certain materials. And when we talk about style groups, we generally think of it in three different categories. And those categories would be urban, or what we often think of as more modern, transitional, which it's more sort of a middle of the road approach, and then also a classic kitchen, which tends to be more of a traditional look, and therefore more traditional looking materials I think are more appropriate for that type of style group. Also, I think to consider too when we're talking about style and materials is the character of the home itself, considering the architecture of the space. Unless you're planning to juxtapose style groups, typically we tend to look for continuity in the space. And by that, typically an older home may not have an ultra modern looking aesthetic. That being said, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it certainly is something I think that you'll want to consider in the space as well. Likewise, when the space is open, if your kitchen is in the center of your home or it's an open concept space, you do want to consider the materials in the rest of your home as well. Again, typically we like to have some form of continuity through the space if you can see into other rooms like a dining room or a living room. So you want to factor in the materials that are in other rooms as well, I think, when you're starting to plan your kitchen. So with that said, let's jump into some different materials. I've got some examples here to show you today. So let's start off talking about color a little bit. We tend to see right now darker colors tend to be quite popular. They're a great way of creating a sense of drama in your space. They tend to have a large impact, and I think they're a fabulous material to use. That being said, though, I think it's important to consider a few different things with a darker finish. So I'm just going to grab one here for you. So this is our, if you can see this here, this is our anthracite door. It's a painted finish, and as you can see, so this is a new door, but you can see that there are some fingerprints on this already. So that's certainly something to consider when using a darker color, as it does tend to show fingerprints. Again, I'll show you another one here too. So this is our pitch black finish, so a dark finish. So if a darker finish is something that you want to consider, I would suggest that you think about using a good substantial hardware that you can actually hold on to, and it will avoid touching the door a lot. I think that certainly is important when using these darker finishes for two reasons. One, fingerprint, and secondly, darker colors do tend to show scratching a fair bit more than some of our other materials that we'll discuss in a moment. So definitely a point to consider when using the darker finishes. Also, just, it could be a good way of using it as an accent as opposed to maybe your primary color if it is an area that you do tend to touch a lot. So I'm just going to put those aside for a second, and I'm going to grab a lighter colored door for you here to see. So lighter colored kitchens, I think, still very popular, have stood the test of time. Let me just hold that up for you again there. So with a lighter colored door in a painted finish, it's certainly a great way to brighten a space if, for example, you don't have a lot of natural light coming in. It certainly can uplift a space, and it can be paired with other materials as well. I think something that we want to consider is if you have an all-white kitchen, if you don't necessarily want to go for a very overly modern approach, then one good way to still keep the kitchen light and bright is to add in another material that might warm it up a little bit. So I'm just going to grab, something like this here, which has a much more organic feel to it, a little bit more texture, and it's a great way to also customize your space a little bit too. Sometimes an all-white kitchen needs a little bit of pop somewhere, needs to have a little bit more personalization on it. So a great way of doing that is bringing in some other colors and materials too. Again, we'll get back to that in a second. So again, light colored doors, great option. Certainly something to consider though is, again, going back to that idea of cleaning it. Again, in my case, I have a dog that tends to slide up and down the doors, and so they get a little grimy. So you will probably find you'll be wanting to wipe a light colored surface down a fair bit more than perhaps something that has a bit more texture to it, because you're going to be seeing those marks on it. All right, so I'm going to show you another door, which is in still our painted series, but we call this door a glazed finish. So the nice thing with the glazed finishes on a darker surface, you'll notice, let's see if I can focus this for you here. So you'll notice there's a bit of a texture to it. So this is a hand finish that's placed on top of the paint. So it actually starts off like this here, so a darker finish, and then becomes this here. Okay, so the nice thing with this is you still get that effect of a dark door. However, because it has that little bit of a texture to it, it's going to be a little bit more forgiving. It's going to help hide some of the fingerprints and even scratches down the road. So a great thing to consider, particularly on lower cabinets. Maybe you're doing an island and this could be placed on an island. Again, a little bit more forgiving to help you with that. So while we're talking about painted finishes, a question we got asked a lot is, what do we paint on? So in terms of the materials that we're looking at for painted surfaces, we do paint on two different materials. We either paint on an MDF, which would be like this one here, and the other doors that I've shown you here as well. These are MDF doors. So one of the benefits of an MDF door versus, say, I'm going to hold this one up for you here, a wood door. So this one is painted on maple. So we do have a series of several doors that are painted solid wood doors. But what you're going to find in a solid wood painted door, this is going to be what's called a 5-piece construction. So when we say 5-piece, ultimately, sorry, I'm trying to see you in the door here. So when we say 5-piece, we're talking about the frame, 1, 2, 3, 4, the bottom, and then 5 in the middle. And what that means is it's constructed using smaller pieces. Now, when we paint a wood door, we have to consider that wood is a breathing material, so it's going to expand and contract. And when it expands and contracts with a paint on it, it's going to cause little lines potentially in those seams. Okay, so something to consider is painting MDF. Conversely, is that this is one piece that's carved with that shape into it, so there's no joins on this door at all. So the difference between the two is you're going to get a very smooth finish on an MDF door. And by smooth, I mean no lines showing up, versus a wood door, which over time, now it may not happen everywhere, but it's bound to happen somewhere. I'm just going to see if I can find, can't really see one too well on this door, but you will get very thin little lines at that join. Typically that's going to happen within the first year, the first winter, summer, expand, contract, the moisture levels. But you will see that. And we always like to point out that that is the reality. It's not a flaw, but rather a characteristic. And what we mean by that is it just goes to show that it is a wood door. It's part of the beauty of the craftsmanship of wood. And it's going to be a different effect and a different look. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to, let me grab them here for you. Let's move on to some laminate doors. So laminates are sort of the workhorse finish of cabinetry doors. And by that, what I mean is laminates are very hard wearing, they're cost effective, and they're certainly a great option in a home that is a very high traffic area. Painted finishes are beautiful finishes. They are regarded as a bit more of a, I don't want to say luxury, but a bit more of a delicate finish. Whereas laminates are very hard and hard wearing and great options when there's a lot of traffic. So let me just grab my laminate samples here for you. So we offer a few different types of laminate, thermofoil and melamine. So the difference essentially between the two, you'll see they look slightly different. So if I grab it's hard to see in this particular one, but if I grab a thermofoil is essentially a vinyl or a plastic that's thermowrapped on an engineered material. So you'll see the edges here are slightly rounded, and it's a great product, hard wearing, as compared to, I'm just going to hold this one up for you here. So this is a melamine door here. So lots of nice texture can be created in that door. It doesn't have to be. We do have solid colors as well that work, but you'll notice the edging is a little bit different. As opposed to it being wrapped, the edges are applied. So, I mean, I tend to think of this one as being a little bit more crisp and clean lined, which lends towards a more urban or modern door style. This one's still very much as well, just a slightly softer approach to it. So as you can see from these two, laminates have come a long way from, I think, what we were used to before. They're very hard wearing, very believable in terms of the effect. You can't feel it, but when I run my hand up and down, it actually has a really nice grain to it. So it's a great option in environments that might be a little bit more humid, and you still want that effect of a wood door. So with that, I'm just going to put that down there. Now we also have what we call a PET, which is essentially a polyester material. And that, so I'm just going to get that one up here for you. So with this one, hopefully I can catch some of the light there. So this almost has a glass-like finish to it. So this is a great option if you are going for a style that is quite modern. This is going to be great to achieve a really nice high gloss effect that's hard wearing and is a little bit more durable, I would say, or quite a bit more durable than perhaps a lacquered finish. You're still going to get that nice glassy finish to it, and it's going to be hard wearing. That said, though, something to consider with high gloss finishes is that they do show, I'm just wiping it off here, it does show fingerprints more, and it will show scratching as well. So definitely something to consider. Now the white door, the white high gloss door, is going to be a little bit more forgiving in terms of showing scratches than if you were to pick a darker finish. Again, much like the painted dark finishes do tend to show scratching and fingerprints a lot more in the more matte finish, and I tend to think that it's actually more exaggerated in a shiny finish too. So something to consider. Ways around that, I'm not saying don't do it. It's just you may want to use higher gloss finishes, particularly the darker ones, more as accent pieces or in areas that may not be as heavily used. Okay, so laminates are, as I said, great options, price effective, and can give you a great look. I'm going to compare that to, as we kind of move ahead, to our laminate door. So we do, sorry, not laminate, veneered door. So we do have a selection of veneered doors. So they are actual wood. They're just very thin wood that's laid on an engineered material. So I'm going to hold this up for you here. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way. So this happens to be one of our walnut doors in a natural, real walnut that is a laminate. And I'm just going to hold it up to our, sorry, I keep saying laminate, I mean veneer. So veneered walnut door compared to a laminate door. As you can see, the laminate, so this is, we'll call it fake wood versus the real wood, they are very similar. So going back to, is resale a factor? Obviously budgets for most people are definitely a huge factor. If this is something that you're considering, which pairs really nicely when we talked about white kitchens and bringing some personality into it, a white kitchen paired with something that's a little bit more textured, a little bit warmer, really is a nice juxtaposition with each other. It gives your space a bit more personality and warmth to it. So when we compare these two, great options between the two, which actually reminds me, when we were talking about wood doors and MDF painted doors, we have a lot of our doors that actually have very similar styles in both versions. So we will have, just going to grab, sorry, bear with me one sec. This one over here. So this one, for example, which is an MDF door, we actually have a very similar door in a painted wood as well. So again, great options when you don't necessarily want those little crack lines. Something comparable could be offered in an MDF version as well. So we do that with a lot of our different door styles. You can do either or. We also do several of our doors in a laminate version as well. So that gives you 3 different price points generally for very similar styled doors and different effects. So something else to consider. Let me just reach over here and I'm going to grab different versions of wood. So in addition to MDF doors, laminate doors, painted doors, veneered doors, we also have a collection of solid wood doors as well. So I'm going to show you these three options here. So when we look at these three, these are actually all the same finish, so same stain on the doors. But I just wanted to give you an idea of how a stain will vary on different materials that are the base. So when we look at these, we're looking at this one here, which is a maple door. So maple tends to be a much smoother grain pattern to it. This is what we use to paint as well when we're talking about painting a solid wood door. This one beside it, this is a cherry wood. Now cherry tends to be a darker wood to start off with. So when we put that same stain on it, particularly in the lighter colored stains, you'll find that you do get a much darker look to it. And then finally over here, the last of our solid wood collection is an oak door. So with our oak doors, the oak tends to have more of a distinct grain to it, a little bit more of a texture to it. Cherry has a fairly heavy grain as well. It does tend to be a bit more of a feathered grain, but is prone to knots. So typically when we use cherry, we'll find that the cherry tends to be more of a sort of rustic kind of feel to it. Okay, so those are three of our wood doors. I'm going to go back to the veneer for a second and just explain why we offer veneer as an option. So typically for our veneer doors, they do tend to be used for flat, no raised panels to it. And you might be wondering why we do that. Why wouldn't we just do a solid door in oak or a solid door in cherry? So the reason behind why we do that is using a veneer creates a very stable product for you. If we were to do a large solid wood door, particularly a door that has a lot of grain pattern through it, it would be more prone to warping. So I don't want you to think that veneer is a cop-out or is not as good of a product. Veneer is actually a great choice if you are looking for more of a modern door style. So it will give you a more stable material. What causes the warping is, for a quick version, is the different grain pattern here versus say here is different densities of the wood. So as their moisture levels range season to season, it's going to expand and contract at different rates, and essentially that's what's causing your warping. All right. So that's kind of a quick rundown on material for your cabinetry doors. However, there are other areas that we want to consider the materials as well. So we'll just kind of quickly touch on that. And areas that you want to consider would be for your drawer boxes. So AyA offers a variety of different drawer options. I think we looked a little bit at that last week with Christine, but just to touch on that a little bit today, very briefly, we offer a collection of metal drawers. So that's going to be offered in both a white and a dark gray option. We also offer wood drawers as well, and with that we offer two different versions of that too. So we'll offer what we call our standard wood option, which will be a butt joint drawer versus a dovetail wood drawer box. And when we look at the dovetail wood drawer box, it's basically an interlocking construction and tends to lend a little bit more towards a traditional door, traditional style, but by no means is it exclusively traditional. Now each of those, they're all going to be soft closing, full extension, and great drawers. They all hold roughly 65 pounds each. So in terms of actual using of the drawers themselves, all are going to be great options. So further to the door styles, the drawers, there's also the cabinet boxes as well. And again, we do want to offer you different options for cabinetry boxes. And this plays into, I think, the style as well of your space. So we offer a gray and a plywood box option too. So with those, you can mix and match with the drawers, some of the drawers and the door styles. Certainly if you're looking at doing a lighter door style, it might be nice to have a linen interior, which is just a really nice texture to it, a little bit, a little bit different from just your standard white. If you're selecting wood drawer, it might be nice to pair that with a wood looking interior as well, just again for the cohesive design. And we can certainly help you coordinate all of those decisions. I know it's a lot. And plywood box options are another premium product offering that we do have. And I think lastly, something to consider that sometimes we forget about is we do offer a product for people that may have allergies. So we offer what we call our EVO product, and that's a no added urea formaldehyde, it's a mouthful, box. And what that means is essentially that the ambient levels of formaldehyde are no greater than the ambient levels, so your everyday. And with that also, in addition to our EVO line, and that's offered both in a melamine version and a plywood box option, it also is environmentally friendly in terms of post-consumer, using post-consumer material as well. And if you do want any more information on that, we're more than happy to provide you with that. Just let us know and we can help out with that. So unfortunately, I know I've missed a bunch of questions here and I apologize. Maybe I can just bear with me a second. We'll just run through a few bit. Let's just see. What are the major differences between walnut veneer and the melamine look like a door? I think I sort of covered that, possibly, Barb. The main look, they're actually quite similar. The main difference with the walnut, we do stain the walnut doors in different colors. So we have, I believe it's 4 different stains that we'll put on the walnut. The melamine or the laminate doors, we do have different shades of the wood. They may not all look like the walnut specifically, but there's a lot of different textures. I would suggest, check out our website. We actually show all the different colors there. It's pretty comprehensive in terms of all the finishes. We do actually have over 123, I believe, finishes. So there's lots to pick from. 123 finishes, 30 plus door styles. So we're here to help you pick through all that. I know it can be somewhat overwhelming. So just let us know and we can definitely help with that. There's another question here, Nelson. Does the walnut change color over time? And it won't? Yes, that is correct. So good question. Most of our doors, even though they do go through, by doors I mean wood doors, even though they do go through a UV top coat, which helps cure and retard the color change, it is a natural material, and natural materials do tend to age over time. You probably know that from maybe some of your furniture. So you will find that the walnut does tend to deepen over time. Jenny, you're asking about materials are more environmentally friendly. Again, I just mentioned our EVO line, both in the boxes and the drawers. And again, we can touch on that a little bit more after if you like. But they do tend to be more user-friendly in that they do use post-consumer wood fiber. And I should also mention actually that even our standard line, not just the EVO line, they are KCMA certified. So that is part of an environmental stewardship program, and basically means that we are complying and actually exceeding the standards. Thanks, Nelson. You just mentioned all of our finishes are water-based finishes as well. So that certainly does help with our environmental compliance too. If there's any other questions, just feel free to drop them there. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. And if there's any other topics at all that you are interested in, please do let us know. Either you can leave us a comment here or you can send us a message. Be sure to check us out on Instagram as well. We do post a lot of our recent projects on Instagram on a regular basis, as well as on our website. So with that said, I think I'm going to wrap it up unless there's any other questions. I apologize if I missed any questions there. Sorry, here's one here. What hardware do you recommend for modern slim shaker cabinets? Good question. So I would suggest a couple different things. I think you probably want to stick with a streamlined, thin aesthetic. Anything overly heavy, I think, might change the very thin look to the door itself. So I think you can either go for just a very thin bar, I would say, or handle, or even a little sort of area that you can put your finger in. We've got some great pictures on our website, actually. One of our displays in our Castlefield location uses one of the very thin modern door styles, and we've actually got a beautiful, very thin lineal black hardware on it, and I think it just really pairs very nicely. In some of your spaces, if you're using that thin framed door, you might even want to consider some push to open doors too. Generally, again, this is personal preference, I tend not to suggest push to open doors in heavily used doors. I think it tends to get a little frustrating, or it tends to get fingerprints over it a lot. But certainly in trying to keep a nice clean aesthetic, I think they are great for upper cabinets. And I think that would be a good solution. All right. Sorry. Thanks, Nelson, for the reminder. So also feel free, if you do want to chat a little bit more with myself or any of our other designers, we do have a link on our website, just above probably where you're looking right now, that allows you to actually sign up for a 30-minute home consultation. So with the 30-minute consultations, we'll set up a time with you, excuse me, and we'll link up and chat about your space. Also, I should mention, we currently do have, we've extended our 20% off promotion for cabinetry. So it's a 20% discount, which is one of our greatest promotions for the year. And in addition to that, we are donating 5% of the cost of your kitchen to the Daily Bread Food Bank for the near future. So it is a limited time offering, but certainly something that we're definitely proud of, and being part of the community and giving back. All right. Thank you again for joining me today. I appreciate you joining me on this beautiful day, and I hope you are well and stay safe. All the best. Take care.